And here we are. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Can you guys hear me okay there on Zoom? All right. And that, I guess, means that I'm probably good on Facebook as well. Welcome, everyone. It is 11 a.m. on April 12th, and that means we are going to be talking about DocuSign. So we're going to go ahead and get into this right away. And I want to let you know that what we're going to be covering today is forms. And I'm going to try and give you guys all the deets on all of the cool forms that you can use in DocuSign, as well as I can't quite show you all of the things in ZipForms because I don't have an account in ZipForms, but I can talk about it and let you know what to expect and what to look for in ZipForms. So with that being said, we're going to jump right into it here. I'm in a contact here. I'm actually in Alana Babineau's contact. If you ever need to reach out to Alana, our marketing design specialist, here's her email, marketing@kwclm.com, and here's her phone number here. This is the information that you can use to get in touch with Alana. As a matter of fact, down in my contact information, I have in her social profiles down here under her URL is timewithbabs.com. So we're going to be talking about this actually in the next class today at 1 p.m. We're going to be talking about contacts being the heart of your database. We'll go over that a little bit later on. In the meantime, let me just kind of actually, before I start working on the actual the lesson material here, does anybody have any questions or things about documents or forms in DocuSign that they wanted to make sure that I addressed today? Sometimes I forget to ask that question, and I wanted to see if you guys were expecting any specific information or if there was information you were looking for that I might be able to make sure I cover. Okay. Tiffany, anything on that? Okay. All right, well, then we'll just go ahead and hopefully I'll cover it. If you have any questions, of course, feel free.
It's Tiffany. Hi, sorry, I was trying to unmute quickly. We don't have to talk about it right away, but I did want to follow up to see if you had any information on the property disclosure in terms of making it a fillable document.
You know, that is something that I was actually working with today. And I don't have any updates except for
after, if you'd like to.
Well, I'll address it just to answer your question, to get it kind of out there. I've noticed that I've had some problems even today. So and in that sense, I don't know if I have any specific updates for you that might help. So basically, no good news.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome, Ruben.
Welcome.
All right. So let's go ahead and talk about DocuSign Forms. Now, what I'm going to do is, like I said, I started in Alana here. I'm starting with the contact. And my goodness, look at that contact health score, 100%. Boy, I'll tell you, that's pretty darn good. I guess I know what I'm doing with those contacts, huh? Get some good stuff there. All right. So we're going to go over to the opportunities section here. And what you're going to see is I've already created an opportunity. And instead of going through that process with you, I'm just going to kind of tell you that I've created it and that we're going to use that opportunity to work with our, well, look at me jumping around. There we go. We're going to use that opportunity. So I'm going to open that opportunity. So here is Alana Babineau listing 123 Winkley Farm Road in Rochester, New Hampshire. I just grabbed one off the MLS today. So I'm going to open that opportunity. And why do I do that? I do that because we always access and make sure that our documents in DocuSign, our forms in DocuSign, we want to make sure that we have a completely filled out details area in an opportunity, including if it's a listing, the listing address here, and the MLS. If it is already in the MLS, we want to make sure that that's added here. If it is not in the MLS, maybe it's an off MLS listing, it's not there, you can still add the property information down here. And that will be different from the MLS because it's not looking for an MLS number, but it will still satisfy the commissions and the document requirements in DocuSign, and also for the commissions here.
Question?
Of course.
So where the listing or the information is, yep. I've noticed in some of our opportunities that that's not there. It's just the contact name to the left.
Okay.
Is there a way to make that part appear?
Yes, absolutely. So let me go ahead and remove the listing here, and let's talk about that. So here we see select from listings is the default when it's a listing. If it's not there, it's a buying opportunity. Okay.
So it's only there for a listing?
Correct. So you'll only see this button if the opportunity type is a listing type. Now, what that means is if you are working with a listing opportunity that is not in the MLS, you can add the property by clicking the little pencil icon here to search for the property, okay? And if you are, as a matter of fact, let me show you what the difference looks like. I'll take this address because this is the address for this. And I'm going to put the property information in this dialog box by just searching for it here. And it finds it and it sees the information, and I'll hit save. So you'll see that the address pops up here just as if it was a listing, but it's not a listing. When you click on this, it shows you like a default no photograph, and it only shows the address that you gave it. This is not a listing in the MLS. This is just a physical property address. So that can be used all the way through the offers and commissions, even if this is a listing opportunity and even if it never hits the MLS. You can use it all the way through to get paid. You can use that address. If the listing is in the MLS, though, you'll want to either replace this with the MLS number, or you're going to want to, you can leave it, quite frankly, but you should replace it with the MLS number because the MLS information will also populate on documents in DocuSign. Now, when you're doing a buying opportunity, you won't even see this button. It'll be blank, but you will still have the property area, at which point you can still add the physical property. And that's how you put in the property address for a buying opportunity. Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so now that we have that information here and on the details tab, it's completely filled out. Now we can go to the documents tab, and this is all part of the forms in DocuSign because everything that's on that details tab is synchronizing with DocuSign. And what that means is if there is a form, and I'm going to use that word very, very kind of like in quotes, if there is a form in DocuSign that requires the address, or if it requires the name of the person, the buyer, the seller, all that information, if that information is here, it will automatically populate on those forms in DocuSign. So we want to make sure that we understand that the details area of an opportunity contributes to what's on a document. As a matter of fact, I'll show you here. If I go to answers.kw.com, which is our complete source of knowledge here, and I type in DocuSign sync, and I just type those two words in here. The first article that pops up is sync opportunity details with the connected DocuSign room or .loop loop. If I click on this, there's going to be a little bar or a little table here that says, where does the information pull from when it's syncing to DocuSign or .loop? And so the information about the agent comes from your White Pages profile, which is why when you go through the agent setup with me, I always make sure that your profile is complete so that your documents are complete. So it's part of the whole big picture. From the opportunity, if you have attached an opportunity, now this is important because the wording is a little bit suspect here. If you are attaching a listing, and let's go back to this. Remember, this is what I'm talking about. When you see the image here and it's an actual listing, when you attach that listing to an opportunity, this is the information that gets pulled to DocuSign, including the MLS ID. If you did it with just the property address, then none of the MLS data goes in, only the physical address. So if you've attached a listing to a listing opportunity, then it goes in. If you've attached a listing to a buying opportunity, then it goes in as well. And then in the offer details, now this is the last stage of the process in DocuSign and in Command. So this is kind of late stage information. Seller 1, seller 2, buyer 1, buyer 2, if you have added it with the offer details. And just to kind of close this out so that there's a full understanding, in Command, once you've completed the documents area and you go into the offers and commissions tab here, the first thing you have to do is you have to create an offer. Now, here's the interesting thing about this. If you have gotten to this point in the transaction and you have not used any of the offer tools within Command, then your documents will all have been hand filled out with buyer information because you didn't put this information in here. So it's not going to pass it over to Command or to DocuSign. And I'll be honest with you, most agents, when they're doing the documentation in Command and in DocuSign, they're not using the offer portion. So all of the buyer information on a listing opportunity is entered by hand. So this is just one of those things where it's all about timing. If you used the offer tool, then the offer information would be pushed to DocuSign. But most of the time, it's not happening that way. But the information does get passed. Okay. So this, as a matter of fact, let me go ahead and give you guys, I'll put this article in the chat so that you can get it from the Zoom room. And I'm going to put it in over here. I'll put it in the, Facebook as well. There you go. So everybody on Facebook has it now too. Okay. All right. So this little article gives you a good idea of why we want to fill out all of the information on the details tab and what it can do for you to save time. The more you do early, the less you do later. And it's all about the forms catching that information in DocuSign. So now that we have this information in here, I've already pulled the listing checklist. Actually, I've already created the entire transaction so that I could save time. And here's the listing checklist. We're looking at all the documents that we need here. And all of the green documents are going to automatically go into DocuSign. So let's go to DocuSign and talk about forms now. So I'll click the Go to Transaction button inside of the opportunity. And when I do that, it opens up the transaction in DocuSign. Now, I've kind of made this screen, I'll go a little bit bigger while we're working here in the beginning, but I might change the size here so you guys can see some things as I go. So the room has been created, and here is the room name based on the opportunity name. Here is the property address because I synchronized this with the MLS and pulled it in. If I go to the details area of the DocuSign room, all of that information has been pulled through because of the amount of work that I did in the details area of the opportunity. Here's Alana's name. I don't have her main phone number here. I've got her business line in there. So we do have a business phone. We have her email address. We got all the stuff that we need here, including the property address with the MLS information down here. Where is it? I forget where it is, but the MLS is in here as well. Okay, so that's all the stuff that we have in there. Every document that refers to any of that information has already been filled out if that document is a form. So over here on the right-hand side, what I do is I changed from grid view to list view. And when I do that, you can see that this green or this blue form indication, this tells us that this is a DocuSign form. So where do we get our DocuSign forms? What are forms? Okay, so let's start with this. You can put a lot of different types of documents, things inside of DocuSign. By clicking the add button here, you can bring things from your computer, an image, an Excel sheet, a Word document, a PDF. There's a lot of different things that you can bring in here. Then there's the DocuSign forms. This is exclusively fillable, templatized forms that are DocuSign centric that you can only get from that particular area. Now, that's not to say that this is the only place that you can get forms, but this is the only place you can get DocuSign forms. So what is a DocuSign form? Well, when we here at the Market Center need a particular document for you to fill out for the compliance process, we have essentially two types of documents. And I'm going to go to DocuSign Forms here to talk about it. We have either documents that are based on 463, New Hampshire, which is us at the Market Center. These are Market Center specific documents, and they all are preceded with 463 here. And this tells you that this is something that you need to fill out for the Market Center. So any one of these, credit card billing authorization, advertising policy, all parties template, all these different things, all these KW463s are forms that we at the Market Center loaded into DocuSign and are requiring you to fill out per the circumstances. And what I mean is you don't need to fill out every single one every time, only the ones you need. Then there are NHAR forms, New Hampshire Association of Realtors, and these forms are provided by the state. And these forms here are required for the transactions for the state. Of course, depending on the transaction and what you need, you don't need every one of them, but these are where we get all of our state forms. A form is not controlled by Keller Williams 463. We don't actually control how the document is managed here. That's done in Texas. We send them the form and we tell them that we need it put into our DocuSign account. They put it in here, they add all of the fields, and then they put it up so that you can access it. These forms have those template fields laid on top of them so that you can fill them out. And in some cases, they pre-fill with all of that information that we talked about a minute ago from the details area. This is for DocuSign Forms. Now, that's one source of those forms. All of these here have that little blue form. There's another source, though. And aside from your computer, as I just mentioned, there's a thing called ZipForms. And now ZipForms is associated with the NAR, National Association of Realtors. So there's a lot going on with this topic now. The forms that are available in ZipForms are, generally speaking, and I'm going to be a little bit vague here because things are a little bit in flux and I don't want to get caught saying something that may change in a week. Generally speaking, these are the exact same forms that you would find in the DocuSign Forms area, all right? With the exception that in the ZipForms pull down here, you're not going to find any of those 463 local documents because these documents in ZipForms are managed by the NAR. So that's the National Association of Realtor Forms. Because of that, you will not see all of the documents that you see in the DocuSign Forms area. So the ZipForms is done by a company called ZipLogix, which I'm not sure who owns them, but I do know that they're a national company and they handle the documentation for all the states. The reality is that those tools are paid for. That ZipForm tool is paid for because it strictly manages the access to those documents. In New Hampshire, in Maine, in Massachusetts, and in Vermont, in the 4 states that we work with, you should have access to these ZipForms documents. If you do not, you need to reach out to us and let us know so that we can make sure you have access. And Tiffany, your question a moment ago about where do I get the new updated brokerage relationship form, or if a document doesn't work in the DocuSign Forms area, if that's not filling out properly, can I get it from ZipForms? That should answer that question for you. You will see all of the latest forms in ZipForms, with the exception of the 463 stuff. You can use either one of these, but I will give you a little bit of a hint here that right now I'm going to place my bet that you should be leaning towards ZipForms. Okay? And here's why. We have been struggling to get Texas to make sure that the DocuSign forms are fixed, functioning, and updated. And sometimes we're finding that they're not updating them as quickly as we want. We've got a little committee going right now to try and address this issue. If you find that a DocuSign form is not filling out properly, it's not pre-filling, if it's doing anything funky, you should try to grab your forms from ZipForms. If that fails, reach out to us and let us know. Okay, quick question of the room. Tiffany, Ruben, Kylie. I want to say, Kaylee. Which one is it?
Sorry, I was trying to unmute as well. No, you got it, Robert. It's Kylie. Yep, but you can just say Kai.
That's what I was trying to come up with, but I couldn't remember it.
Whatever's easiest.
Well,
Just
then
don't
whatever's
call me Link
easiest
for
is I'm going to
Love.
call you Robert.
All right, perfect.
Do you guys, and have you had access to DocuSign Forms and ZipForms? Are you guys both, are all three of you able to get in to either avenue to get your documents? Okay, we got a shake in the head. Yes. Ruben?
Yep, I can.
I haven't needed to yet. I haven't had the chance to try, but
All right. I want you
I have
to
a client
get in there
now. I have
today.
a client now, and I'm getting ready to do an offer. I'm going to have to really get this stuff down, so that's why I'm here.
Okay. Tiffany?
I was just going to suggest to Ruben that if he has some time to play with it ahead of time, it's definitely worth it, because I played around a little bit in this where I haven't yet put together anything for a client, but just to get a general understanding of how it works. So if you have a chance to play around with it, I definitely recommend it.
I completely agree, and I couldn't agree more. Here's the thing, while you're thinking about this, and thank you, Tiffany, because that is such an important piece of becoming a master. And I've talked about this on the quick starts and the other trainings. Don't do this when you need it. Do it before you need it. Do it now, get in there and play around. The best way to do that is to sell yourself a home. Go ahead and create yourself as a contact in your database and go through this entire procedure, including sending the documents to yourself, signing them, experiencing what it's like, finding what works, what doesn't, noticing that, oh my gosh, this didn't get signed or this is missing. Experience it so that when you do send it out for the first time for real, you know what to expect and you've already experienced it as a purchaser or a buyer or a seller or whatever. So definitely get in there and create yourself an account. By that, Tiffany, have you set up or do you have access to both DocuSign Forms and ZipForms? You should have DocuSign Forms, but do you use the ZipForms?
Yes.
Okay, good.
And yes. Yep.
Okay. So let's talk about that ZipForms Access for a moment. In case any of you are now looking at ZipForms going, oh, well, I should probably get that set up. There's two things that you can do. One is you can click this add button. And if you have not used ZipForms before, just click on ZipForms. Just click right on that ZipForms option. And it will say, what is your ZipForm username? What is your ZipForm password? And if you're like, I don't know, then you say, you can come down here. It says, if you do not have a ZipForms account, sign up at ZipLogix and then view our ZipForms support articles. Do this, even if you're not going to use them today, get this done so that you have them and you're ready to go. If you have your login and you're already set up in here, then you can link this account to this transaction. Now, when I click this, it's not going to happen because it's going to be like, yeah, you're not real. So what I kind of have a limitation on how far I can go here, because this is a good thing. The only people that can access ZipForms are realtors with the license number and your NERDS number. You basically need to be confirmed as a realtor. And since I'm not, there's no way that I can get around this. But once you link this transaction here, there's some cool things that happen. One is you do not need to go into ZipForms to get your forms. So what I'm saying is you don't have to log out of DocuSign and log into ZipForms and go do a bunch of work and then come back here. This is what I call a pull through. So when you click add and you say, give me my ZipForms, it's going to pull those ZipForms into DocuSign for you. And it's going to connect them so that you're working the whole time in DocuSign on forms that are coming from ZipForms. It's a really cool little process. Okay. And again, if you have any trouble with that, definitely reach out to us here and we can work with you to make sure that it's connected. Okay. All right. So that's one way you can connect your ZipForms. The other way you can make sure your ZipForms is connected is to go to your profile icon in the top right corner. And when you click on your profile icon, you can come down here to preferences. When you click on preferences, on the left-hand side, you're going to have a section here called integrations. When you click on integrations, you will see ZipForms. And you can do the same thing, click that little thing here, and you get the same dialog. In addition to your ZipForms connection here, you're going to want to also make sure that right below this, your DocuSign Forms settings include your NAR or your NERDS ID number. And to do that, you can click on Add Provider. When you click Add Provider, you'll see the NAR here. And you'll see also that DocuSign has recently kind of, for Keller Williams, we've expanded out to show the CAR, the GAR, the Northwest, which is, I think is Washington State, Northwest Multiple Listing Service, and then the Oregon State. So we have these different ones here, but then the NAR, when you click on that, it's going to ask you for your NERDS ID. If you don't have that physically handy, you can click on Find Your NERDS ID, and that's going to open up a page that'll ask you for your email address. So your last name and your email address. When you put that in there, it will give you your NERDS ID. And then you fill that out and you'll select your association. Now, when I click on this, it's kind of a mess. You can see that there's a long line of Association of Realtors here. You're going to find in this big list, you want to come down here to New Hampshire Association of Realtors. And when you do that, you'll be able to select it there. Now, again, I can't do this, not a nerd, so I can't do it. All right. So those are how you connect to your document libraries, which are your forms. And it's really, really, really important that you do that, because when you're inside of a room, that access is going to be for all of your rooms, for all of your transactions. Okay. So let's talk about this add button again, because we're talking about forms now, and I want to be very clear about what forms do that is different from things like PDFs or Excel files or Word files. Only forms are going to access the information from the Details tab. Forms are the only tools that are going to look on the Details tab and pre-fill the information about anything that's here and add it to the form if it's required. Only forms do that. PDFs do not look here. They don't see any of this information, which means if you downloaded a document and you're trying to use a PDF, it's not going to pre-fill with any of this information. And when you go to send out a PDF, you're going to have to manually add all fields to that PDF for every person that needs to sign it, or anywhere you need initials or dates or anything like that. PDFs are dumb, flat documents. They are not recognized by DocuSign as forms to be filled out. Now, for those of you who might have heard some information that PDF forms can be turned into fillable forms, we're not going to cover that in this class, but pro tip, you can do some really cool things with PDFs and kind of make your own templates out of them, but we don't cover that here because we want you to use the existing forms that are pre-built and that do what they're supposed to do. But PDFs can do some pretty cool things, but you just have to dig into it. That's all I'll say on that. Don't ask me anymore. Tiffany, don't you dare ask me anymore. Okay. So what that means is forms. What's that?
That somebody does have the answer, and I will find who does, and then I'll share all the good details.
There's some cool stuff you can do. I'm not going to lie, but yeah, I'm not going to tell you about it either. So let's.
Your secret
is my secret. Yeah. It was my now that the secret's out. Okay, so let's kind of take a look at forms again, and we'll talk about what you can do with forms and templatizing. There's some really cool stuff that you can do to pre-fill additional information on forms. Now, this is going to be an introduction, not a full lesson, but notice how we're in a DocuSign room right now. We've mentioned that we're in the room with Alana Babineau, and it's for this listing on Winkley Farm. If I leave the room and I go to a section called My Docs, one of the things that's in the My Docs area of DocuSign is there's a section for you to keep forms, your personal forms. Now, what this means is you can load in PDFs into this area, and you can use these inside of your rooms. So think of it as a library of forms that you may want to give to your clients. A good example of this, here's a welcome letter. Here's a paid at the table policy, which is not something you would give to your client. Here's an escrow policy. You would not give it to your client. But if you needed any of this information for your client, you could put and kind of store a bunch of documents in here that are not forms that you could just pull from. So why would we do this? Well, maybe you've got a folder on your desktop and you're always saying, well, I need to send this to my client or I need to send that. You can keep that all in DocuSign and send them out as needed. So let's say I want to take this escrow policy. I could right click this thing and say, I want to move this or copy it and say, I want to make a copy of this and put it into an envelope. I could do that and take one out of here and put it into an envelope and then use it. So for if you're on a team and you have some team things that you want people to read, or if you want to pass along some bonus information, that's a good place to do it. In the form section, next to personal, we have a section called forms. And this is unfortunately a lot of times misunderstood. This is the complete library of all of the documents that are stored in DocuSign for the 463 documents and for the NHAR documents. There's 45 NHAR documents and there are 36 463 documents. In addition to that, there are some buyer templates and listing templates. None of these documents can be used for signatures. This is a library for reference only. So when I open up the NHAR stuff here and I look at these forms, if I'm saying, okay, I want to do a brokerage relationship form for a seller, I can look at that form and I can see, oh, look at that. It says sample form right across the top of it in big letters. And you cannot download it. You can't print it. You can't transfer it to a room. All this is for, you guys, is for you to look at this and say, is this the document that I'm looking for by name? Yes, that's the name I'm looking for, and I'll go ahead and use it. So there was a big misunderstanding about this. People were like, why can't I move this form? Why can't I use this form? And you can't. You can't do it. It's for reference. So now, with that being said, I'm going to show you something cool that DocuSign did for us because of this issue. So it's a long ways to go from the room to that section. Now I'm going to go back all the way to the room here for you. I'll go into my room, and here's the room. So to add this form, let's say it was the brokerage relationship form. If I click the add button and I go down here to DocuSign Forms, there's 2 clicks, right? And then I come in here and I'm like, okay, with the 463, the brokerage relationship form, actually it's a new NAR. So there's a brokerage relationship form. One of the things that they've done is they've made it easier. Instead of having to migrate all the way over to forms into the right area and look at it, they've added a preview button. So anytime we're actually looking for a form, we can click the eyeball on the right and it previews the same form that we saw in the sample forms library. And you can actually see it and go, yep, okay, before you even bring it into a room, you can preview it now. So that's a cool little tool that they did. All right. So instead of going all the way over there, you can go here, go into the form area. All right, back to the My Docs for a second. I'll show you one last thing here. We have personal, which I showed you is where you can keep your forms. Forms, which you're not going to need anymore because you can preview all the forms when you're pulling them in. And then there's form templates. Form templates was added last year. And what this does is it allows you to take any one of the forms that are in the library and pre-fill it with information about you as the real estate agent. So for example, if you're, I'll do something simple because some of these things make sense and some of them don't. But here's a KW referral form, and I've made a template out of it. And what this means is when we use these templates, we can pre-fill some of the information about us as the agent. We can pre-fill information like here's the Robert Vincent, Keller Williams Coastal Lakes and Mountains Realty with all my address information here. So notice that this has nothing to do with a room. This has to do with me as the agent. So template forms you can pre-fill in the template area. And then when you add one of these to the room, you can pre-fill it with information that you want to use. This can save you tons of time. It may not be something that you want to do today right out of the gate, but here's the general rule. If you find that you're in DocuSign and you're using the rooms and you're bringing in documents and you're always filling out the same type of information, maybe it's the fees that you charge as an agent. Maybe it is your agent information. All of that stuff, if you're finding that you're constantly filling it out for every single form because it's not auto-populating, consider making a template that includes the details information and the information that you pre-fill here. It's a pretty cool tool. Now, again, I did one class on this. I'll have to make sure that I add it to the LMS, but this is a pre-fill tool that you can use. All right. So
Robert,
thought it was
quick question.
Sure.
For the form templates, those can only be generated by forms. They can't be generated by PDFs. Is that correct?
That is correct. When you create a form, you'll notice that the dialog box only allows you to say which form from the library would you like to use. So you can use the 463 or the NHAR. And so you're using the library documents. You won't be able to bring a PDF in here. And to that point, Tiffany, that's what I was saying is where the PDFs can be used to create templates, but not in this dialog here. Good questions. All right, so let's go back over to our Documents tab here. So we're back in our room. All right, so let's take the next step here. If we are working with a form and we need to fill that out to send it out to our client, I'll go ahead and I'm going to make this a little smaller here so you can see I've got 6 forms to choose from. There is one of the more common ones that I see coming through here is obviously the broker's relationship form, but that one's pretty easy. Let's kind of take a property disclosure here. So when I click on the property disclosure form inside of the documents area, the document is opening up and it's merging the information from the details tab. And if it was something where I had created a form template for adding additional information, I could add that here as well. But right now you see that it pulled in from the details, the person, Alana, the address and all that. But you can see that this particular one has a rule at the very top. It says to be completed by seller, which means none of these fields, the type of septic system, the property, condominium, rider attached, none of these fields are fillable because this is to be filled out by the seller. So this particular document does have areas which you can fill out, but it also has areas which you cannot fill out, and it requires the seller information to fill it out. Now, if you have areas where you need to fill it out, you can just type right here. You can just add information into these boxes. If you have something that you need to fill out that is not a box on this that you can put your cursor, I'm going to show you in a minute how you can add additional information to a document where there are no fields for you to add information. Now, this is different from what you would find on a PDF where all the fields have to be added. I'm talking about specific areas, okay? So this document, if I want to send this out, I can come up here to, not other actions, I can come up here to the top document actions, and I can actually, from this fillable area, I can create an envelope and send it out. So there's version 1 of sending a form out for signature, is to open it up, edit it, and then go right up here to document actions and create an envelope. That's 1. Number 2, if you want to send out a form after you've filled out, what you need to, you can right click the document here. Here's number 2 and choose create envelope. So there's the second method to create an envelope and send this document out. The third method is if you want to put a checkbox in the upper left-hand corner of one or multiple documents, then on the toolbar that pops up, you have a create envelope. So you have 3 ways that you can create an envelope containing 1 or more documents. Okay. Now, I'm going to take one document into an envelope. I'm just going to take the property disclosure form because I want to show you how the envelope process works. So in brief, you want to keep in mind what we're really saying is just like old school. You've got some documents, you've pre-filled the information where you can, and you need to stuff them in an envelope and send them through email in this case. But if you want to think old school, it's like a manila envelope that's going to walk down the street and hand it to someone. When we do this, I want you to keep in mind that something interesting is going to happen here. Number one, each document or each form in this particular scenario may have different people involved. Some are for sellers, some are for buyers, some include agent signatures, and some do not need agent signatures. So each document has its own requirement. That's why they're the way they are, right? So we have to pay attention to that when we take multiple documents into an envelope, because we need to specify for each document who's supposed to sign where. And because of that, I'm going to start with one to show you what it looks like. So I've got my document selected here with a little checkbox, and I'm going to click the pen icon, and it's going to create an envelope for me. So here's my envelope. Now in the envelope, I can specify a name for this envelope. This is for me as a reference. So I could say that this is the property disclosure. So I'll put my cursor in where it says envelope name, and I'll say property disclosure form only. Okay, so now I have, just for me, I know that the only thing that's in here is the property disclosure form. Down to the very, very bottom of the page, we have messages that we can send to all recipients. So we can say if the default email subject is please DocuSign, and then we can put a message in here. So I can say, hi, Alana, here is the property disclosure information form that I need you to sign. If you have any questions, please reach out. Okay. So we want to put something personal in here, and you could even put in the subject line something more personal. Property disclosure form. Okay. So this way you're putting something in here that makes sense for the client. And I tell you this because of experience. When I bought my house that I'm in right now, the agent that I worked with, non-KW agent, sent me hundreds of different documents, and every one of the envelopes that I received said, please DocuSign, and there was no subject, there was no content. And when I was going through my documents to try and find things, I got really frustrated because I couldn't find what I was looking for from my agent. Help them out. Be nice about it. Okay. Now back to the middle. It says add documents to the envelope. We already added one, and here it is, the property disclosure form. To get this document signed, we need to tell DocuSign who needs to sign it. And that's what this section here in the add recipients to envelope is for. Now remember, I brought one document into this envelope to give you a demonstration. So look at this, add recipient, and it says you have three choices: pre-tagged roles, room participants, and email addresses. Here's the rule. You always use pre-tagged roles if they're available. And when I say available, what I'm really saying is if this is a DocuSign form or if this is a zip form, you will have pre-tagged roles. That means that the document knows who is supposed to sign and where, because it's a form with those pre-built objects. If you have a PDF and that's the only document in here to sign, you will not see pre-tagged roles because the PDFs don't know who's supposed to sign where. You'll only have room participants and email addresses. Now, with the pre-tagged roles, as I mentioned, the document is going to know who's supposed to sign where because the document is going to be listed here. NHAR property disclosure residential only. And on that form, there is a spot for seller 1, seller 2, buyer 1, and buyer 2. And all you have to do is tell the system who is seller 1. And if you have a seller 2, I do not in this case, you would specify them. And this document also has slots for buyer 1 and buyer 2. And if you were doing that at this particular juncture, then you would have buyer 1 and buyer 2 added to the room already, and you would be able to pull them and have them fill out the right slot. In my case here, it's really, really simple. I only have one seller and I don't have anything else to sign. So I'll just add Alana. And when I add Alana, it brings down here and it says Alana Babineau needs to sign this document is the default. And it's already building in the background where she needs to sign. And that's what's on the next page. So when I come up here, and again, remember I'm doing one document. So I click next, and in DocuSign, it opens up the envelope editing window, and it's going to pull all of the boxes, all of the places that Alana Babineau needs to sign. It's going to color code this, and it's going to show me on each page all of the areas where she needs to sign. Could you imagine doing this with a PDF, putting all those radio buttons in those boxes in here? A nightmare beyond words. So this process of using the pre-tagged role assigned Alana Babineau as seller 1, and it knew where she was supposed to go, and then you could just send it off. Okay? That is why pre-tagged roles are so important. Let me show you something. I'm going to go back to the previous page here. I'm going to go back. I'll click the back button at the bottom, and I'm going to unassign Alana Babineau as the pre-tag. All right. I'll click this to delete her. And I'm going to say Alana Babineau as a room participant. This is where the nightmare begins. Room participant. And it says, okay, who are the people in the room? Here's the people in the room. So I'll just go ahead and say, add Alana to the document. So I click that and I say, add selected. All right, let's look what happens in the next area. No fields, no pre-filled checkboxes. And if I wanted to add all those, I'd have to come over here and add every single one of those manually because I did not use the pre-tag option. Do not do that with forms. Forms are not PDFs. Do not use anything but the pre-tagged role for forms. Always use pre-tagged roles. So I'll go back and I will add Alana as a pre-tag, and I'll say seller 1 is Alana Babineau, and I'll say add selected. And once again, the beauty of the system lights up for you. Boom.
Robert, I have a quick question.
Uh-huh.
When you are in the details tab and you have tagged Alana as the seller 1, will that save it? When you go to pre-tag roles, will it already have her name filled, or do you always have to do the drop down and choose?
So that's a really good question. So let's explore that because it's actually it's a mixed question. All right. And so what I mean by that is this. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close this. Let's go back to the details area. Okay. In this details area, this seller 1 slot right here came from command, and it knew who Alana was with their phone number and email. It's using this information in this area to determine what a role is. And the role is seller 1. So when we put in command, we put in command Alana's name as our contact, and we built the opportunity around her. When we did that, DocuSign said, well, let me go ahead and assign her this role. So to your first question, will it change? No, it will not change on its own. Although you can edit this screen and you could change it for a spelling error, or you could change it for something else. And by the way, spelling errors and something else includes if you have to do like a trustee. So this is where you would do that kind of an edit. So that's something that you would do there. But this information is being passed to the document. So inside of the document, when we actually look at the document, you'll notice that this particular editing window does not refer to Alana except for the seller slot. It doesn't put it down here at the bottom in the signature area, the initials, because that's going to happen in the final stages. But it does recognize that on the document, there is a field for pre-population for Alana Babineau, and in fact, a seller 2 as well, which we did not add to this. So this will update if you change on the details tab, if you changed her last name or added some initials afterwards or something like that. This will update based on the details tab. The details tab will not update on its own unless you edit it here. So here's an example. This can mess people up. I'm gonna throw this at you. You're gonna be like, what the hell just happened? So if I put Alana Babineau, cool lady, okay, and I put that in there. When I save and close this, that information that I just added is going to update on the details page. And here it is. And what that means is that any other document that references Alana Babineau is now going to have that information as well. So it's a one-time edit, and it propagates everywhere. So no matter where you edit the information, it propagates on all documents. And that can throw some people off, because I heard a couple weeks ago, somebody said, well, what if I want one name on one document and another name on another? And I'm like, well, are we talking about two transactions? Or are we talking about the same transaction? Why would you change the name of seller one from one document to the next? And that gets into a whole thing that moves way beyond my tech training into talk to your broker. Okay. But anytime you put information on one of these documents, it propagates back to the details tab, and it propagates through any other document that references that material. Okay. And those pre-tagged roles will also reference anything in the details area or on these documents. So I'll take that little thing out of here and I'll save that. And now it's going to update everywhere. Does that help?
So part B of that question, yes, it does. And part B of that question, so when you're creating envelopes and you do your pre-tag roles, you send out a property disclosure to Alana, and you select her as envelopes within that same room. Does that information change, or do you always save, or do you always just do the drop down? Sorry.
I'm going to ask you to
Like,
ask that
once you
again.
choose her for an envelope. Okay. So when you're in the envelope and you are, you do your drop down for seller one, and you send the property disclosure to Alana to sign. When you do future envelopes for additional documents, I was just curious if that information's saved.
Okay, so if I use pre-tagged roles
and choose your seller.
Right. If I use pre-tagged roles in envelope one, when I create envelope two, will it already know that she's the pre-tagged as seller one? No.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank
So
you.
each time you create an envelope, it's basically stupid, and it doesn't know what the last envelope had for who was seller one, seller two. So you will need to assign every time you create an envelope. You'll have to assign that through. Okay. And that makes more sense for your question. All right. So let's take a look now at what happens when I have multiple documents that need to go into a single envelope. So right now, up until this point, we talked about one envelope that had one document in it. So I'm going to bring in pretty much all these documents. And the reason I'm going to do this is because I want you to see what happens with regards to pre-tag roles. So I just selected all these documents, and I'm going to say create an envelope. Now this is overkill, but this is still going to demonstrate some very fundamental, important things for you. And that is, when an envelope contains multiple documents, one of the things that you have to pay close attention to is when you go to the add recipient and you use the pre-tagged roles, which you should be, when you click on this, you're going to see multiple documents in the list in the middle. So here's the consent and waiver. There's the brokerage relationship form. Here's the wire fraud. There's the disclosure. And that means that you may have to put seller one on multiple documents, because this is only talking about the wire fraud alert. So you'll have to pay attention to make sure that all of seller one's roles on all of the documents are assigned to the correct person. And that way, when you do this, you're not missing anything. Now, this one in particular, I'm going to tell you, I've noticed a little bit of a glitch this morning. I added 6 documents to this envelope, but I'm only seeing 1, 2, 3, 4 in this list. And I'm not able to scroll down any further to access the others. For some reason, when I add multiple documents to an envelope, I'm noticing that not all of the documents are pulling up with all of their fields. And that can be, that could kind of throw you off. So for now, again, I'm recommending that we do less. Instead of putting in all 6 of these documents, or in this case 7, put in a couple at a time and make sure that they're pulling through. And you could even add documents as you go. So what I mean by that is, so I got 2 in here. So notice of consent of waiver and property disclosure. So when I go to add pre-tag roles, I see 2 documents. So there's, in this case, I don't need to have buyer 1 and buyer 2 sign, but I've got the seller 1 and seller 2. So I can add those. Then I can add additional documents and say, okay, so now that I've got those, let me go with the property disclosure residential. Oh, it's already in here. Exclusive listing agreement. There we go. We'll bring in the third one. Document. It's already in the envelope. That's why. Okay. So there it is. And I can bring it in and see there's the exclusive listing agreement. So seller 1, seller 2, listing agent on that one. Boom. Pull me in here. So you basically want to make sure that you get them all in there and they're all added correctly. So let's get seller 1. That's Alana. Is that? Yeah, there we go. Okay. So go through it carefully to make sure that you have all of the people added. And like I said, it can be a little bit wonky. And just know this, I hate saying this, but it can be funky, but we are working on trying to figure out why some of these are happening. Like I said, we started a little a miniature committee to figure out how to get these addressed quickly and get everything right. If you are experiencing difficulty with any of these, all right, it's best that you reach out to tech support in Texas because they can address things much quicker and they can take care of the issues a lot faster than I can. Because just going through me, and we're kind of changing our policy a little bit on the support that I offer because it takes more time to go through me than it would to go directly to support. And I don't like to see people wait. As much as I love helping you guys out, it can get a little bit bottlenecked. And I don't like to see that happen. So if you do need to reach out to support you guys, you can always go directly into command, click the question mark in the upper right-hand corner next to your profile icon, come down here and choose chat with support. And you can actually talk directly with Texas. And they've got a whole team of people down there. And this is where I go when I have a problem. I go here and I click get in touch and I start talking to them about what's going on. So, don't hesitate to let them know what's going on if you have any problems. While we work on some of these things, hopefully we'll get them resolved as quickly as possible. Okay. All right. So that's the forms stuff. One of the things that I'm actually going to be out of the office all next week. Normally we would do the PDFs on the 3rd week of the month, but I'm not going to be in the office. I'll be back on the 4th week of the month. So we'll take a look and see what that's going to look like. I might try to kind of extend it over to that and do PDFs. Any questions before we go? Okay. All right. So I'll let you guys go. At 1 o'clock today, we're going to be coming back and doing Command 101 with your contacts, the heart of your database. And at 3 o'clock, we're going to be building a KW agent website. So until then, we'll see you guys later. I hope you have an awesome day. And if you make it back, I'll see you then.